Pick up almost any plug in your house right now. Look at the flat metal prongs right near the tips. Two small, perfectly round holes. You've plugged this thing in thousands of times, pulled it out just as many, and never once asked why those holes are there. Do they carry electricity? Are they just there to save metal? Or is something inside your wall actually using them? The real answer goes back over 100 years, to a problem nobody today even remembers existed. In the early 1900s, homes in America didn't have wall outlets at all. Houses were wired for one thing only: overhead lighting. So if you wanted to use one of the first electric appliances, like a toaster or an iron, you had an awkward problem. You had to unscrew the light bulb from the ceiling fixture and screw your appliance's cord directly into that same socket instead. Picture that for a second, standing on a chair, reaching up into a live light socket just to make toast. It was clumsy, it was inconvenient, and it was genuinely dangerous. Something had to change. The man who solved it was Harvey Hubbell. Hubbell wasn't new to this. He'd already invented the pull-chain light socket back in 1896, the simple switch you tug to turn a lamp on, still used today. By 1904, he filed a patent for something he called the separable attachment plug. His idea was clever. A base would stay permanently screwed into the light socket. A separate two-pronged plug connected to the appliance could click in and out of that base whenever needed. No more unscrewing light bulbs. No more standing on chairs. It worked. But it took decades to fully take over. Manufacturers kept building competing, incompatible designs for years afterward. It wasn't until 1931, almost 30 years later, that wall outlets like the ones we use today finally became the standard in American homes. In 1913, Hubbell patented an improved version of his plug. This one had small indents pressed into the metal prongs. Those indents would eventually become the holes we still see today. So why did Hubbell add the holes? In his original design, the metal contacts inside the wall socket weren't just flat strips of metal. They had tiny spring-loaded bumps built into them. When you pushed the plug in, those bumps would physically click into the holes on the prongs. It locked the plug in place. No accidental pullouts. No plug slowly working its way loose over time. It was a simple, elegant mechanical solution, and for decades, it was the standard. For most of the 20th century, this bump and hole system was exactly how plugs stayed connected to the wall. Here's where the story takes a turn almost nobody knows about. If you opened up a modern wall outlet today, you would not find Hubbell's tiny locking bumps anywhere inside. They're gone, completely abandoned. Modern outlets use a totally different method to hold a plug in place. Inside the wall, tight spring-loaded metal plates simply grip the flat sides of the prongs. Pure friction, no clicking, no locking mechanism at all. Which raises an obvious question. If the holes don't lock into anything anymore, why do manufacturers still bother punching them into every single plug? Why not just leave the metal solid? The truth is, those holes never actually left. They just quietly switched jobs. The first reason is manufacturing. When a factory builds a power cord, a thin metal rod slides directly through those two holes. That rod holds both prongs perfectly straight and parallel, while hot liquid plastic is injected around them to form the base of the plug. Without the holes, keeping the prongs aligned during that process would be far harder and far more expensive. The second reason is safety, and this one can genuinely save lives. It's called lockout-tagout. If a machine is broken, faulty, or under repair, a worker can loop a small padlock directly through the holes in the plug. That makes it physically impossible for anyone to plug the machine back into a wall socket until the lock comes off. This isn't a minor detail. In 1989, OSHA, the agency responsible for workplace safety in the United States, made lockout tagout an official federal requirement. According to OSHA's own estimates, proper lockout tagout procedures prevent around 120 deaths and 50,000 injuries every single year in American workplaces. A feature that started as a simple way to stop a plug from wiggling loose became one of the most important safety tools in industrial America. Today, electrical codes don't even require those holes anymore. Manufacturers could legally leave the metal completely solid, but they don't. The holes are still there on nearly every plug made. A quiet leftover from an invention designed in 1913 for a locking system that disappeared from our walls decades ago. Nobody clicks into them anymore, but factories still rely on them to build every cord. And safety inspectors still use them to stop a dangerous machine from being switched back on. Two tiny holes, over 100 years old, still quietly doing their job on every single plug you own. That's what we do at Unknown Behind Known Things. Find the real story hiding inside the things you use every day without ever looking twice. Subscribe for more and tell us in the comments, what everyday object should we look into next?